It's time for Real Talk with Brian and Dan, the weekly talk radio show dedicated to discussing important real estate topics, plus insight into the local community. With a combined experience of over 50 years as local real estate brokers from the East Side Real Estate team at Keller Williams Realty Bellevue. Here's your hosts, Brian Leggett and Dan Edwards.
All right, happy first week of summer, Brian.
Yeah, just waiting for summer to show up.
Yeah, right. I know. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 KKNW. It is Wednesday, June 26th, a very special day in my life. I married the love of my life about 19 years ago today.
Nice.
Woo woo. Okay, so back to the show. If you'd like to listen to this podcast anytime outside this time, feel free to download them anywhere podcasts are found. Another great show. I'm excited, Brian, to talk to our two guests. Doug Schwed, attorney with Access Law Group, and then we have Dani Leggett and Amanda Peterson with WFG Title and Escrow. So it should be fun, but of course, before we get to those guests, it's time for some Real Talk.
All righty. So, Dan, we're going to talk about dream homes.
Yeah.
Hey, Gen X, it's time to buy your dream home.
Yes, it is.
Dan, what do you know about that during the housing market crash? I know Gen Xers, homeowners lost more wealth than other generations. However, things are changing now. Strong economy, increasing home prices, and the recovery of the housing market are helping this generation to regain their lost wealth. What have you seen?
Well, according to Pew Research Center, I like to say that, their fortunes have actually rebounded more than those of other generations during a post-recession economic expansion. And the home and stock prices have risen. Since 2010, the median net worth of Gen X households has risen 115%. In fact, in 2016, the most recent year with available data, the net worth of a typical Gen X household has surpassed what it was in 2007. So it was $63,000. It's up to $84,000. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So according to the 2019 Home Buyers and Sellers Generational Trends Report by the National Association of Realtors, in 2018, Gen Xers made the largest share of home buyers market at 24%.
Wow.
Greatest share that purchased a multi-generational home at 16%. The largest share that purchased a detached single-family home, 88%. The highest median household income, $111,100, and bought the most expensive homes of all generations. Job-related relocation was identified as the primary reason to buy.
So I don't know if you know this, Brian, but I'm a Gen Xer.
Oh, you're kidding.
No kidding. Now, I didn't buy a home
Go
in
Gen
2018.
Xers.
Yeah,
Man,
but
look at those numbers.
Yeah, when you do look at that, it's like, holy cow. I mean, 88% bought a single-family detached home, and that highest median household income. Now, that's across the United States.
Right.
Well, I mean, since we invented the internet, I always tell my kids, you're welcome, you're welcome for inventing the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was people way before us, but I just like to claim it like
so
Al Gore did.
One of my friends posted, what did people do before the internet? Like, what did our parents do? And the friend said, I don't know. I'll ask my 23 siblings. So,
That's awesome.
So I'm curious, what trends are you seeing with the Gen Xers you're working with?
Well, it's not just buying, right?
Yeah.
They're also selling. So, the whole intro to this conversation was check out the largest generation in wealth growth. Well, they're selling their homes. 25% of them sold.
Uh-huh.
The highest median household income was $123,000. The tenure, that's interesting, is how long they stayed in their previous home is 9 years.
Yeah.
And I believe before that, the previous generations was 7.
Yeah, it's less. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long, you've been in your home a while. How long for you?
17 years.
There you go. See,
That's
that
crazy.
ups those numbers, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm definitely not average.
Yeah.
Below
No.
average, maybe. I don't know.
Slightly above average.
Slightly above average. So one thing that's interesting is the reason that many Gen Xers are now choosing to sell, and the number one primary reason to sell was the house was too small. So it's funny, if you look at that typical cycle of, between 4 and 7 years that existed before that bust. Well, if you go 2006, that's 12 years, right? And we were right at the very bottom of kind of the recession was 2012. That's when it bounced back up.
Right.
Started coming back around. So then you add another 6 years to that. That's where you get like that longer median time in that previous property. Here's the one key statistic that's interesting is 91% of Gen Xers selling a home used a real estate professional.
You know, interesting, something that's been a real change for me in helping find the dream home is how Gen Xers are looking for a home. Of course, the internet's a big one, but it used to be most of the time people would say, well, we want to be in this neighborhood, this location. And now what I'm seeing is we want to be 25 minutes from work, 45 minutes from work, and we're using the internet to choose areas based on drive times. We have tools to do that. I don't know if you've used InRex, the tool we have. Love it. But I had a family recently, Gen X, that they wanted to be 45 minutes from work during the maximum commute time, not taking into account, events like if there's an accident or something, but normal commute time, bought a house in Federal Way to commute to Seattle, less than 45.
Yeah, they understood that basically they could find what they were looking for by using a tool, that technology, right? That could help them find what's important to them. And that's one of the things about Gen X is family for them is pretty solid, pretty important, and being able to have that valuable time spent and minimize the time in the car. Of course, I think it's a given that you're going to have to commute, and unless your budget is unlimited, you still have to kind of.
And they were willing to go, a longer commute time to get more house, and they got a lot more house.
Right.
And just really, dream home.
It's a dream home. And what's interesting about that, using a piece of software to predict it, is it's not what you think. Like, it's not a circle, right? You don't draw a circle. It's a polygon. You have these spots that have longer angles that you have to get to. And some, like, for example, if you were to go east, from Bellevue, you would think that it'd be, a shorter commute time to get to parts of Sammamish, but actually you could go to Snoqualmie quicker than you can get to parts of Sammamish because of the traffic on the arterial routes off the freeway. So along the lines of dream homes, one of the things that I've seen lately is some folks are willing to stay in their house longer, but buy a second home instead. Destination purchases, right? So Lake Chelan, that's an example. Cle Elum is another example. Finding something over in Moses Lake, or even a little more exotic, say Hawaii. I talked to some folks who were like saying, hey, we'd love to have a place that we could stay there, but use either Airbnb or Home Away to monetize that property. Who have you helped out in that regard?
I've had several clients buying a second home, and also sometimes helping a family member. This is typically not a Gen X move, but helping a family member buy, so acquiring that way. And one of the things I think about is the resources that we have in helping connect these buyers with really excellent brokers. One of the things that we can do with our Keller Williams system is vet a broker who really is like-minded, who's diligent, who will do a great job in buyer representation.
Yeah, one of the first pieces of technology that Keller Williams got busy on about 2 years ago was their referral system. And essentially what it is Keller Williams is one of the only worldwide actually, organizations that tracks every bit of business right down to every new agent that comes in the door. So there are other companies that, they'll track their local business or they're a franchise of a bigger brand name. But Keller Williams, if you work for a Keller Williams office, that office every first of the month has to send their numbers to the mothership, that data. That's part of the franchise agreement. So because of that, I can look at, say, Kissimmee, Florida, right? I had a friend who his mother was getting ready to sell, and I went out on this app, and I actually was able to narrow down the exact neighborhood and then find agents with production in that neighborhood. And then I could call them and say, hey, tell me about how you do business. Because what I found, I want to know it's cutting. It's creating a warm introduction to somebody who is an expert in that area rather than just picking somebody that shows up on Google. And I got to tell you, it's been fantastic. We've been able to hand a lot of business, a lot of our trusted clients, not only there, but also help somebody like, say, buy in another marketplace with in-depth knowledge without them having to just guess who they're working with.
And a work style, someone that's not going to pressure, who's going to really educate, inform, and guide. And it's also, for us, nice to be on the receiving end of that as well. So we really love those referrals when we get them.
And honestly, I predict that I'll probably get my license in multiple states and be able to kind of serve clients with our experience at a higher level, because that way you stay in our ecosystem, you get the same quality that you would get here on the east side in, say, Phoenix, Arizona, in Sacramento, California, wherever we could actually have boots on the ground. All right. Good talk.
Sounds good.
All right. So coming up next, we've got two fantastic guests from WFG Title and Escrow. So come on back after the break. We're going to talk about title and escrow.
We'll be right back.
Did you know when you pay rent, you're actually paying someone else's mortgage? Are you tired of missing out on owning your own home? Fact: homeowners on average have 40 times the financial net worth of renters. The Eastside Real Estate Team has been helping many first-time home buyers find and buy their first home. They specialize in customer service and put you first. They listen first to what you're looking for, and then they take the time to make sure their clients understand every aspect of the home buying process. If owning a home has been your dream, the Eastside Real Estate Team can help you. For a free, no-hassle consultation, call 425-200-4093 or find them online at the eastsiderealestateteam.com, a subsidiary of Keller Williams Realty in Bellevue.
Find out the latest about your favorite shows on Alternative Talk 1150. Check out 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 AM KKNW.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Dan. Our first guest is Amanda Peterson, Business Development Manager with WFG National Title, and Dani Leggett, who is a escrow closer with WFG Escrow. Over the last 6 years, Amanda has been a top business development manager at WFG. Amanda is a native of the Pacific Northwest. She loves interior design, entertaining, and a good suspense novel. On weekends, you can find Amanda out in the garden getting her hands dirty. Also joining us from WFG is Dani Leggett. And Dani, she comes with over a decade of escrow experiences. Her career with WFG began as a front office coordinator in our Puyallup branch. Since then, Dani has been very effective in working her way up the ladder, actively working as a successful escrow closer/LPO. The passion Dani exudes in creating a more memorable experience for her customers and clients perfectly align with her lifelong career goals and dedication here at WFG Title. Dani takes a great pride in being accessible and available to her clients, whether it be via text message or late-night question by email. Her professional diligence and delivery allow her to organically establish long-lasting relationships, instill value within her clients, form friendships, and in turn, they become a valuable piece of the WFG family. So, Amanda, Dani, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for having us. Happy to be here.
Welcome. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Dani, Amanda, hobbies, interests. What do you guys like to do when you're not doing title and escrow?
When are we not doing title and escrow?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, totally.
I'm kidding. I like to spend time with my family. I've got a little boy that's 4.5 years old, so he definitely keeps me busy and on my toes. We actually just got back from a camping trip over to Chelan.
Nice.
So being outdoors is, something we like to do with him.
Yeah, I would assume that he probably likes running around and getting his hands dirty, like his mom.
Very
right?
much so, yeah. Constantly dirty, yes.
Dani,
you would be surprised how many rocks I found in his pocket.
Nice.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do with the rocks? Throw them or put them in your pocket?
Yeah, right.
Dani, how about you? I know you're working all the time, so with your few moments of leisure time, what do you like to do?
Yes, I do work a lot, but I do love my job, so that helps. But I really enjoy the outdoors, and I have a little bit of an obsession with plants, indoor and outdoors. So I have about 50 house plants that I take care of, and they're my babies.
Nice.
And I also have a new kitten named Jacques, who I like to spend time with on the couch when I'm home from work and drinking a glass of wine.
Where did you get the name Jacques?
My sister actually fosters cats. She lives in Spokane for a local shelter there. And they named there was a litter of about 5 kittens a few months back, and they named them all from Lady and the Tramp characters.
Oh, right.
So, and she talked me into adopting him, and now he's my baby.
Nice.
That's
nice,
great.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, since this is a show about real estate, Amanda, I'm going to throw this question to actually both of you get to answer this question is, what is one of your fondest memories of the home that you grew up in?
Ooh, that's a good one. I know what mine is. I think it actually is when it was back in the day, one of the unique winters where we actually got quite a bit of snow.
Mm-hmm.
And having my mom home because we were snowed in, having the wood-burning fireplace going and going outside sledding. We had a big hill right by our house, and coming inside and just getting warm and doing puzzles with my family. I think that would probably be mine.
Puzzles. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Definitely snowy day. And Dani, how about you?
Hi there. So I really, there's a Lake Sawyer grocery store. I grew up in Covington, and I, in the summers, we would ride our bikes to the little store, as we named it, and get about $10 worth of candy.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And then go back to my parents' backyard and sit on our trampoline and eat all the candy. So,
Binge candy.
yeah,
There you go.
that's our parents have a
That's
really,
funny.
really nice big backyard. So, and they keep it really beautiful with flowers and everything. That's probably my favorite memory.
That's awesome.
That's great. Amanda, tell our listeners, what is title insurance?
Well, the easiest way to explain title insurance is really it's a way to protect buyers and lenders, for that matter, against any defects that could appear on title when transferring property from one individual to another. I think people typically think of insurance and they think about health insurance, which title insurance is a bit different because instead of insuring something that could happen in the future, we're actually insuring anything that may have happened in the past. So there's two typical types of title insurance. Usually there's the lender's policy, so when you're going to be getting a mortgage on a property, and also the homeowner's policy. So with either one of those, we typically do 3 separate searches. We will do a chain of title search, so we'll search the history of the ownership of the subject property. We'll also search tax records to make sure that they property taxes and whatnot and assessments are up to date and current. And then we'll actually also search the names of the individuals because we want to make sure that there's no liens or judgments against the owners or the potential owners.
Wow, that's a whole lot of stuff, isn't it?
It is.
It's very exciting, let me tell you.
Well, I mean, it's funny. We've got in here an attorney who has some history searching title and stuff like that. And I also had a good friend of mine who down in Houston, he's an attorney and he worked for the oil companies. And it's funny, I guess, west of the Mississippi, title is done one way. East of the Mississippi, it's done another way. So it's kind of like this kind of like in our business, Brian and I's business, when we're working with sellers, it's like, well, what is this insurance for? What does it do? And I think you explained it really well. But it is one of those things that it rarely comes up, but when it does, man, it could be costly. So if you don't have protection, you're up a creek.
That's very, very true.
So Dani, let's talk about escrow. What is it and when is it used?
So Washington is an escrow state, which means you can close a real estate transaction, either a resale or a refinance, with an escrow company or an attorney. Escrow is the neutral third party that facilitates the transaction, most specifically the dollars. So we handle all of the money from buyer and or lender and then disperse funds on the seller side for payoffs, proceeds, etc. And we work together with title to clear any possible title issues or liens, judgments, etc.
Awesome. So other states are not escrow states, which means what?
That the attorneys are closing real estate transactions.
Only attorneys.
East Coast, there's a lot of both escrow title or escrow attorney states, but they're predominantly attorney states on the East Coast.
So does that make it more streamlined, Brian, do you think?
Not in my experience. I've done both.
And it seems like 6 of one half does the other.
Yeah,
Okay.
To me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Dani, what's the most common questions you get from clients concerning escrow services? Where's the information lacking?
Common questions. I think the most common question that I'm getting right now is, do I know about wire fraud? Because I think there's so many articles out there and even newscastings about the wire fraud that's happening in America right now. And so there's a lot of people that are prompting me with those questions and really asking me, what are you doing to make sure that my money's protected? And WFG has very strict policies in place to make sure that the customer and their funds are protected. And we have secure portals for wire instructions. We don't email wire instructions. We can't take any revised instructions over the phone or in an email or even in a text, because we want to make sure that the human that's providing us the information is the correct human that should be receiving the money and or sending the money. So we also require notarized signatures, for example, for disbursements when we're dispersing proceeds to sellers.
Yeah, I just thought of something like a good idea is maybe having a secure portal where you log in, right? Just like you would log into a bank, so it's encrypted, and then you supply the wire information. Have you guys got anything like that? I'm sorry, I just put you on the spot, but I was like, hey, that's a really good idea because...
No, it is a great idea, and we have implemented that.
You have.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, we have a portal. We have a couple different options. One is our My Home portal. The way I describe it to my new buyers and sellers is it's a pizza tracker for your real estate transaction.
Pizza tracker for your real estate. Nice.
Yep.
I like
it gives you the step-by-step of what's happening and what's needed and where we're at. There's a pie graph, essentially, with a percentage of completion for the transaction. And buyers have access to the wire instructions there in our secure portal so that they can take those to their bank and issue the earnest money wire or also funds to close.
So we had a personal experience with wire fraud. We use a form that's a wire fraud alert. We have people sign, we have the conversation, we explain all these things to them. And so it kind of made me wonder, well, how does this happen? Well, one of our clients, one of my broker's clients, a broker that works for me, in helping a buyer with a home sale, they got an email directing them to send their down payment, all their money, and it looked like it came from him, but it did not. It had been hacked. And so the wife sends the money, calls the husband, she's excited, and the point is, in the excitement of the moment of buying the dream home, just forgot the conversation. And thank goodness we were able to get right on that, call the bank manager, and actually stop the wire.
Wow.
It took about 2 weeks to get the money back.
That is rare. That's great news.
Right. Almost $100,000 that went out in the excitement of the moment, even after having the conversation. So for Dan and I, one of the things we do is we don't mean to be too repetitive, but we remind people about it. We have them sign the disclosure up front. We encourage you guys to continue to have the conversation. People sometimes get a little lost in the process, and we view it as our job to guide them through.
Yeah, I think the safest way is just take a suitcase full of $100,000 bills and just walk them over. No, I'm just joking. Just joking. All right.
Well, it's interesting because most people don't know what title and escrow is, so you can explain something to them. But like you said, if they're caught up in the moment of being excited, some things could overlook.
Totally.
So
I mean,
I'm glad you guys are repetitive about it.
Yep. Absolutely. So with all of this, who pays for title and escrow?
So in the purchase and sale contract, it's typically stated that the escrow fee is split in half between buyer and seller. The escrow fee is based on the purchase price. And then title insurance, the seller traditionally pays for the owner's policy on behalf of the buyer. And then if there's a lender involved, the lender also requires a policy, and that's paid for by the buyer.
Right. So one thing that is unique in terms of the insurance industry about title insurance is it's a one-time up front, one and done. And for the life of, as long as you own the home, that insurance is there for you. So that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Yeah, and when you think about, and I mean, Brian and I both know contracts up one side and down the other, and we know it's spelled out specifically in there. However, if a buyer and a seller negotiate, they can, right? They can negotiate where a buyer can say, listen, I want the seller to pay my fees too. But it would have to be. It would have to be
negotiable.
Yeah, everything is negotiable.
Yep, I love that about real estate. Let's see. So, I was going back to the pizza question. I wanted to know: would you guys deliver a pizza if we needed it? If it was
on the portal?
On the portal. Danny, you said service was pretty awesome. So I don't know.
I'm not going to lie. I will never forget this. I had a client one time, and he was so patient, but his lender, there was a lot of hiccups on the day of closing. And he was in our office. It was a very sensitive file, and we were just trying to get it done. And he was in our office for probably 5 hours, and it was near the end of the month, and we had the company got us lunch, and he was sitting in the dining room, and we were just like, hey, do you want some pizza and some salad? So
that's awesome.
You can
Good
get
service.
pizza.
Awesome. You can get pizza. You just have to hang out with you guys for 5 hours.
Yep, exactly.
Right. Okay, so what's a typical escrow process like? What's the general timeline?
General timeline, yeah, that's a really great question. General timeline is, I would say it's based upon the buyer's lender, typically, and how quickly they can get their approval through underwriting, and then also just how quickly buyer and seller are moving on their forms, since we unfortunately do not have information like phone numbers, and then we need written authorization, social security numbers to order mortgage payoffs, HOA demands, etc. So typically, I would say it's about 25 days. I have closed a transaction as quickly as 4 days.
Wow,
that's impressive.
Even with a resale certificate and a payoff on the seller side. So
Wow.
it can be quick, but typically it's about 25 days.
25. Okay.
So what happens day of closing?
On the day of closing, if there's a lot of different scenarios there, but we'll say on the day of funding and recording, if both buyer and seller have signed, we will, escrow company, take the signed loan documents, send them over to the buyer's lender so that they can review them. They make sure that all of their underwriting requirements are satisfied, cross the T's, dot the I's, and then they fund the file and release us for recording. We now are e-recording in Pierce, Snohomish, and King County, so we
Really?
don't have to physically walk the documents down to the county, which is saving us a lot of time.
Wow.
And we can release our files up until about 3:30. So even if we have a later release, we can still record same day. And we get recording numbers by 5 p.m. at the latest, and all is good in the world.
Awesome.
That's great. I was not aware of e-recording.
Me
That's
neither.
terrific.
When did you guys start doing that?
Let's see. They started in King County. Resale. So we've been e-recording for refinance transactions, so just the deed of trust, for quite a few years. For e-recording excise, so on a resale transaction, I would say 2.5 years, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We missed that one. So we've got time for just 2 quick questions. The first one I'm going to send to Amanda. What makes WFG different from others in the industry?
Well, besides Dani and I not being there,
Good answer.
I think the biggest difference is really just the fact that we are trying to be as transparent as possible with your clients, the consumers. Again, it kind of goes back to a lot of times buyer and sellers aren't really unsure of what happens once it gets in escrow. I kind of feel like it's this 30 days of darkness typically, and they start to get anxious. So what we've done is we've taken upon ourselves. Dani mentioned our My Home dashboard. It really allows them in real time the ability to track their transactions. So they are seeing things progress. The anxiety is not as high. We give them access to their documents if they'd like. We make it very easy for them to get a hold of us. And then we also help kind of streamline the post-closing moving process by partnering with some companies that will give clients an update of who their utility providers are so they can get them transferred and connected. They can also help assist with getting their change of address taken care of. So we really try to think about all aspects of the transaction, even post-closing, because we know that if a client's happy, it's only going to reflect well on our brokers.
Awesome.
So how do our listeners get a hold of you?
How do they get a hold of us?
Yeah.
Probably the easiest way would be just to call our front office and ask for either one of us. Dani and I, like we had mentioned earlier, are always kind of working, so we're always available, whether it be our main office line or just via email or cell phone for that matter.
What's that number?
My cell phone number is 425-417-6406.
And the office number?
425-453-8880.
Amanda and Dani, thank you so much for joining us today. After the break, we have in studio Douglas Schwed, Managing Attorney of Access Law Northwest. We'll be discussing what to do before signing a contract with a contractor. We'll be right back.
Not sure if now is the right time to sell? Worried you missed the market? The Eastside Real Estate Team specializes in helping homeowners maximize their equity when selling. With our proven premier listing service, our clients have sold their homes for more money in less time than the competition. We know you have many choices when working with a real estate agent, but with the Eastside Real Estate Team, you get a team of highly qualified, experienced agents. From staging to deciding if your property is market ready for top dollar. If you're considering selling, call the Eastside Real Estate Team at 425-200-4093 or check out our website at the eastsiderealestateteam.com, a subsidiary of Keller Williams Realty in Bellevue.
Are you ready to select a residential contractor for your remodel project or custom construction? Have you been presented with a contract to review and sign? Well, before you go any further and before you sign anything, contact Douglas Schwed at Access Law NW for an expert contract review and a contractor due diligence investigation. We highly recommend that before you sign any major home improvement, remodel, or custom construction contract, that you consult with a qualified real estate contract attorney. Mr. Schwed has developed a proprietary 10-step builder due diligence investigation algorithm, which fully and completely documents any contractor's operating and legal compliance history, including litigation checks, including civil and criminal background, bankruptcy filings, licensing compliance, insurance and bonding compliance, and other relevant business details. From that investigation, a written report is provided highlighting all areas of concern so the client can make a fully informed, unemotional business decision before the sign and before performance problems and disputes arise. Go to accesslawnw.com to contact us or to get more information. That's accesslawnw.com.
Seattle, Tacoma, Antwerp. That's right. We're streamed worldwide on our app and on the web at 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 KKNW. I'm Brian.
And I'm Dan.
Our next guest is Douglas Schwed with Access Law Northwest, PLCC. Doug has been practicing law in Washington since 1981. For nearly 40 years, he's been servicing the real estate and business legal needs of his Puget Sound clients. Doug's practice specializes in contracts, real estate and business law, fraudulent conveyances, and legal investigations. Doug, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Dan. As I said, I'm a practicing attorney for nearly 40 years, and I've done all kinds of different things. But primarily I focus on dealing with consumers, dealing with contracts and business opportunities that might present itself. And I have a new area that I'm focusing on, and that's fraudulent investigations and real estate due diligence.
What do you do when you're not working? What are your hobbies and interests?
I like to build furniture, believe it or not, and I have a pretty extensive wood shop. My son's a contractor, and we work together on some different things, and it's been really rewarding. I've got all my fingers.
That's not very common for woodworkers, is it?
No, it can be. You got to keep your eye on the ball. That's for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
So where do you get your wood?
I get it different places. Second use. I get some stuff downtown. I know a couple of guys that when they're tearing down, clearing lots, I can get some bigger pieces. And
I've got a sawmill. It's called Four Finger Mill. And no, I'm kidding.
I'll be up to see it soon, I'm sure.
No, but we get some pretty interesting stuff out of there.
Yeah,
a lot of urban timber.
And I'm trying to just work a little more wood and metal together, which I think is an exciting medium.
Yeah.
So this is a show about real estate, and even though this is going to be talking about you and your law stuff, go back to your childhood. Doug's a young guy here, so what's some fond memories you have of the home you grew up in?
Well, I grew up in kind of rural Colorado, and we our family had mines, and they had cattle ranches. So I was always, running around playing in the mines, and lots of snow and skiing, and we had a nice, a big place and 5 acres, and we had an outdoor skating rink and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a very outdoorsy kind of a situation. Yeah. Lots of animals, horses, dogs. Yeah.
All right. So getting into the business of legal disputes, what's the number one area of the disputes you've encountered?
Well, I think now that what I'm seeing, Dan, is because of the rising housing prices and the values, that people are staying in their homes longer, and therefore they're remodeling their homes rather than selling and buying a new one. And I'm seeing a lot of issues with contracts and with remodel contractors, frankly.
Yeah, the interesting thing, I wish I had the statistic, but I believe that there were some record numbers over the last year of people pouring into remodeling. I've heard that. I remember that, yeah.
So what can a consumer do to help prevent issues with residential contractors?
Well, the one thing they can do, and it's a free thing, is to just check them out. Get some references, ask for references, and check those references. I mean, that's looking on the internet. It's pretty transparent now, and you can, if you do some due diligence, you can find out, exactly what kind of work they've done, if the customers have been satisfied, what their areas of expertise are, and also if there's been some disappointment along the way.
Right. I think you can look up their business license pretty easily,
Their
right?
contractor's license.
Contractors.
Yeah, L&I.
Right.
Yeah. If they've got a active license and bond.
Yeah,
Right.
that brings me to my question. What are the requirements to become a residential contractor in Washington State?
Well, surprisingly, the thing that shocks a lot of people is that there's no requirement for any experience.
You're
Really?
kidding.
No. You have to have experience and pass a test to be an electrical contractor and a plumbing contractor. However, to be a general contractor, all you need to do is have a business license, post a $250,000 insurance policy for general liability, and have a $12,000 bond.
Well, and I think it's important to explain that a general contractor isn't always doing the work. They're maybe just coordinating
managing
the work,
the job.
right?
And it's similar for subs, Dan. Like I said, the two exceptions that do require some tenure and experience are the plumbing and electric trades. But most of the subcontractors, if they are licensed, the only requirement they have is a $6,000 bond.
So along that line would be drywall, painting, floor refinishing, windows, that kind of thing?
Correct.
None of them have to prove any ability or skill before getting a contractor's license.
Yeah, that's correct. I just had a case I just finished up settling, and it turned out that the contractor was using day laborers he found up at Home Depot to do some of the work. I mean,
Wow.
it was egregious.
So by the time you get involved, that transaction's gone south. What are the most common things you're seeing? What are the problems that are arising?
Well, I think there's two sets of problems. One set is the contract itself. And I can touch on some of the things that we find that are missing. And I guess I want to emphasize one thing to do initially is when you get ready to enter into one of these contracts, have a qualified lawyer look at this deal, because we're finding there's job descriptions are incomplete. There's no performance payment ties. There's oftentimes no understanding about who's pulling the permits on the deal.
Mm-hmm.
There's no penalties for miscompletion dates.
I think the interesting part about that is when everything's hunky-dory, when you're happy and you've got them coming over and doing it, that's, nobody thinks about the details that could go wrong. It's when things go wrong that you're like, well, what did we agree upon?
That's correct. And so, if we get into that situation and the contract doesn't have some of these key provisions, like an attorney's fees clause, for instance, the state of Washington, you can only obtain attorney's fees in litigation if it's either provided for by contract or by statute. So that being said, the contracts are very important it's important in the contract rather to have a attorney's fees provision, which incentivizes an attorney to go after a contractor. We also, the other big problem we see are change orders and having a clear definition of what is a change order, having mutual acceptance on a change order, and just a detailed bid that outlines all the costs, including specifications, manufacturer specifications, and making it clear exactly what the customer wants to have installed in their house.
So, Doug, if somebody was to say, hey, listen, I want to hire these people, they're not giving me a contract, can they just draft one themselves and template, like a standardized kind of thing?
That's a good question, too. 75% of the contracts I see never include a provision that ties the payment to completion, for example. 50% of those don't include any termination clause if the builder doesn't perform.
Yeah.
And 25% of the contractors out there don't use written contracts, which in the state of Washington really creates a problem because those are basically unenforceable.
So that means that the recipient of the work could it's not enforced if they tried to collect on it or place a lien on the property?
Correct.
Is there a statute provision for attorney's fees in Washington?
I'm sorry?
A statute provision for attorney's fees?
There's no statutory provision.
So it's got to be in the contract?
It's got to be in the contract, correct.
Wow.
Now, there would be, in the case if you can prove a consumer protection violation, which is a pattern of behavior. In other words, the contractor is so egregious that he's done it to other people, you could possibly dovetail an attorney's fees claim under that provision. But that's a difficult argument to make sometimes.
Wow. Occasionally, I run into mechanics liens on properties from previous work. You get involved in that, and if you tell us a little bit about liens, please.
Sure, I sure do, Dan. Dan.
Brian.
Brian. I'm Brian.
I'm Dan.
I'm Doug.
It's okay. We're all good.
Liens are a statutory way. They're provided by statute. They're very specific. One of the things that the consumer needs to know, in order for a contractor to even file a lien, has to be licensed. So if you're not licensed, you don't file a lien. Can't perfect your interest that way. And the liens have to be filed within 90 days of the cessation of work or delivery of materials to the site. So it's important to know when there's a dispute going on, when was the last time materials were delivered or the builder was at the site. And they have to file that lien within that statutory period of time. And they also have to file a litigation after that within 9 months of the time they file their lien.
So because residential contracts are not uniform, what, in your experience, are some of the important provisions you find to be deficient or missing entirely?
Those would include such things as, like I mentioned earlier, a termination clause. It's very important that the contracts spell out the reasons why the homeowner or the contractor can terminate the deal. Back to liens for a second, the contract should also provide and require, and state law requires that the consumer be given a notice of consumer rights related to liens, which explains to the consumer, the homeowner, what in fact a lien is. It can be attached to your home. You can actually get foreclosed out on your property. And that's something that the consumer needs to sign, and the builder needs to keep in his office the hard copy for 1 year. So there's no debate about that. And if in fact that is not done, then the lien rights could be voided.
Right.
I talked about a little bit about the one other area we see that needs addressing often in a complex deal would be what happens if there's some mechanism for the architect and the builder to resolve things. In other words, if the architectural plans show it one way and the builder determines it can't be built that way, how is that problem resolved?
And who's responsible for it?
Right.
Yeah.
How who's got the authority to say what and do what? So those on bigger deals, that's important. If there's we talked about the attorney fees clause. We've talked about the cost, detailed costs and a budget and a clean bid.
So just to recap, when it comes to getting work done in your house, if you hire somebody to come out to do it, and you have a verbal contract, and there's none of these things outlined, then really the contractor's kind of putting themselves in a bad spot more than the consumer.
Well, I think it's equally bad for both.
Yeah.
And I think the builder certainly has put himself at risk because he's got no mechanism to enforce payment if he doesn't get paid along the way.
Right.
And similarly, the consumer has no recourse against the builder for poor, shoddy work.
Right. And Brian, you and I both know in this business right now, not only just doing remodels to your house, but getting a home ready for sale, right?
Right.
Tradesmen men and women, tradesmen and women, are hard to come by to show up, do a timely delivery of work. And so corners could be cut. And that liability falls to the seller if something comes up during that transfer, right?
Right.
So I would say it would be really awesome, Doug, that if you can somehow provide that template, because I will say this as somebody who has experienced this in the short term, is I don't have any mechanism to hand a contractor, say, hey, let's outline this that has all these provisions. Let's fill in the scope of work, and we both agree to it. That would alleviate liability if you did that in advance, and then you can move forward, rather than relying on a contractor who may not realize that they're leaving themselves open. They're just trying to do their work, because typically most, I don't know, I'm using a very broad brush when I say that, but many are just working. They're just out there doing things. They're not thinking business-minded and, attorney-minded.
So that goes to my next question, which is, how do people actually implement your service, to do the review? At what point should they reach out to you?
They should reach out, Brian, when at the time they've decided or what they think they've made a decision on the contractor, but before they've signed any agreement. Mm-hmm. So when they've been presented a bid and a contract from the builder, that's the time to get in touch with us. And we'll go through it. We'll review it. We'll also do a 10-step due diligence review of that builder, which includes a litigation review, does all the due diligence for the state and records and insurance and compliance and so forth. But it goes deeper. We look at past litigation. They might be involved in any complaints that have gone to litigation, bankruptcies, liens, judgments, foreclosures that may be affecting the viability of that business.
Now, how much does it cost to review and due diligence? How much does that cost?
Our 10-point due diligence, which gives you a written report, is $250.
Wow, it seems like it would save a lot of money.
Seems like a bargain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a bargain. It's 2 or 3 day turnaround. So at the point where the consumer gets the contract, like I said, from the builder, then that's the time to shoot it to me, and I'll take a look at it. And
Doug, if an individual has maybe a handful of contractors they're working with, like let's say they're looking for a specific job, so they've got 3 people that they've bid, would you bundle that together in one, or is it $250 for each one?
Well, we could look at if they've been presented 3 contracts, and that would be 3 contract reviews, and then it would be 3 due diligence reviews as well.
So typically they choose one and submit that to you.
Right, that's typically what they've done. They feel they can work with this guy, and at that point, but do it before you sign.
Yeah. This stuff's good to know.
Yeah.
How do our listeners reach you?
The easiest way is either call the office, 425-495-1277. We're here in Bellevue, or shoot me an email.
What's your email address?
It's Doug, D-O-U-G, at accesslawnw.com.
Sounds
awesome.
Good. Doug, thank you so much for coming in today. You're listening to Real Talk with Brian and Dan at 1150 KKNW. After the break, we have some more Real Talk and, of course, some great final thoughts. We'll be right back.
Did you know when you pay rent, you're actually paying someone else's mortgage? Are you tired of missing out on owning your own home? Fact: homeowners on average have 40 times the financial net worth of renters. The Eastside Real Estate Team has been helping many first-time home buyers find and buy their first home. They specialize in customer service and put you first. They listen first to what you're looking for, and then they take the time to make sure their clients understand every aspect of the home buying process. If owning a home has been your dream, the Eastside Real Estate Team can help you. For a free, no-hassle consultation, call 425-200-4093 or find them online at the eastsiderealestateteam.com, a subsidiary of Keller Williams Realty in Bellevue.
Are you ready to select a residential contractor for your remodel project or custom construction? Have you been presented with a contract to review and sign? Well, before you go any further and before you sign anything, contact Douglas Schwed at Access Law NW for an expert contract review and a contractor due diligence investigation. We highly recommend that before you sign any major home improvement, remodel, or custom construction contract, that you consult with a qualified real estate contract attorney. Mr. Schwed has developed a proprietary 10-step builder due diligence investigation algorithm, which fully and completely documents any contractor's operating and legal compliance history, including litigation checks, including civil and criminal background, bankruptcy filings, licensing compliance, insurance and bonding compliance, and other relevant business details. From that investigation, a written report is provided highlighting all areas of concern so the client can make a fully informed, unemotional business decision before the sign and before performance problems and disputes arise. Go to accesslawnw.com to contact us or to get more information. That's accesslawnw.com.
Wondering what's on next on Alternative Talk 1150? Check out 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian and Dan. I am Dan.
I'm Brian.
And man, what a great informative show today.
Yep.
I mean, we learned a lot of good stuff about contracts. And, I guess being a real estate agent, I kind of like that. I like protecting our clients and their investment.
Right.
So I have a final thought, and this is along the lines of liability. I won't go into too much detail, but marketing remarks. So when you are out there and you're marketing a property, real estate agents are advertisers, and it's our goal to present a property in its best light.
Right.
So, AKA, how many times, listeners, have you shown up at a house when you expected it to be gigantic, only to find out that it was a fisheye lens that they used to take a picture of the living room, right? So, marketing remarks can be troublesome. We've had an issue where, based on how a property was described, a government organization wanted to levy a connection charge for a ADU. So,
accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah. So that was my mistake, because on title specifically this thing was built as a exercise room, like a yoga room, and that is essentially you walk out to it. There's two things in there. But we like to sell things, right? As maybe somebody, mother-in-law you don't like so much could sleep out there, or she could stay in your guest room in the house. So I think it's important, Brian, for buyers to understand that these are marketing remarks, and there's a certain amount of
there's a difference between a misstatement of fact and and puffing. Best home, best home in Bellevue versus X number of square feet. And one's a statement of fact and one is, selling the sizzle.
Yeah.
So, but it's important for a buyer to do their due diligence.
Yep.
So one other quick thought, actually a brief story. Last week we touched on multiple offer situations, fight or flight, the two reactions I see from a buyer. And it's about a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the lessons I've learned is I always coach my buyers, if we find a house you like, make the offer. It's if you love the house, make the offer. The worst thing that can happen is you don't get it. I had a client this week. We walked into the perfect house, an absolute cream puff, and their first reaction is, we'll never stand a chance. And, of course, I counseled them, you like the house, let's write the offer. A little work on my part, but let me just carry the load here, get this done. We got it. We're the only offer.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing. If they ran away, they don't get the house.
They don't. Yeah, you can't hit the ball if they don't swing. They don't get up to bat.
What if you don't play?
Yeah, and that's really, I think, part of it is let us do the heavy lifting. And if we get in there, everybody automatically thinks that if there's high interest, that there will be a bidding war. That's not always the case now.
The market's leveled out some. It's still a great market for sellers and a great market with buyers, especially with rates where they are. But you can't win if you don't play.
Can't win if you don't play the game.
That's right.
Well, we're just about done, but before we go, I've got a fun event this weekend in Seattle. If you like dragons,
Pina coladas,
pina colada. Yeah, you're getting caught in the rain. I was supposed to mention my daughter, Kaylin. So if you do end up listening to this is the very end. She just graduated from high school. So hooray. And her 18th birthday was last week. So, there.
Shout out to Kaylin.
There's my shout out. And then Dragon Festival is this weekend.
What day is that?
That's in the International District. So Dragon Fest this year is a focus on the community and small business in Chinatown/International District. This year's Dragon Fest will be one day only. You can find amazing food, craft booths, craft booths, activities for kids, live entertainment, and the food walk, $3 food walk. So Saturday from 11 to 7 p.m. in the International District. I think it'd be fun. Maybe you'll see a dragon or two.
Sounds fun.
Well,
right.
Thank you so much for listening. I'm Dan.
I'm Brian. Until next week.
See you later.